The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. It's time for Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. We'll talk all things Hokie wrestling with Coach Tony Roby and staff. Now, let's join your host, Hall of Fame wrestling writer and broadcaster, Jason Bryant.
Episode 77 of Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. Talking today with Hokie head wrestling coach Tony Roby. Jason Bryant here with you as always. Hokies kind of reveling, maybe not as much as Coach would talk about, but Hokie fans, Hokie Nation, pretty happy with the Virginia Duels performance. We spoke briefly after the Hokies won the fourth National College Division title in school history and absolutely blasting that team in Charlottesville. And Tony, as the week has gone by, you've had a chance to settle in. You know, you'd said that it really wasn't something that you really, focus on a whole lot. But, in the week that's gone by, it is really nice if you're a Hokie to beat up on that school in Charlottesville pretty bad like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question about that. I think for our fans as much as anything. But, yeah, I mean, whenever you wrestle school that's 2 hours up the road in state. We wrestled two in-state opponents, and to wrestle as well as we did and dominate the way we did was good. It was rewarding. I think as much as anything, it was reassurance and confirmation that I think we're heading in the right direction, doing the right things in the wrestling room, and we've had some time, and January's been a pretty good month for us where we've had 2 weekends off. So what that allows you to do is it allows you to have, back-to-back hard training phases where you feel like you can make some gains. In fact, we just went back to school today. Classes started for the spring semester today, so we have a long break. And that also allows us extra time and I think more quality time in terms of development and addressing areas that we need to address as a team where guys aren't going to class and you have a little more time in the day and there's not quite as much stress on you. So January's been a good month for us in terms of making gains, and that's really what this time of year is about. And we're not going to have a lot of opportunities to have extended training phases really from now until our dual meet season is over, because I think we go 5 weekends in a row where we compete.
Looking at how you competed at the Virginia Duels, you got the four. You got the 4 wins. You're sitting there, and it's 3 wins actually on the front side, and then of course the win over Virginia. We spoke about to BC LaPrade about his performance, kind of that going home and kind of having a really kind of a breakout weekend. Everybody seemed to pretty much be firing on all cylinders. Where were you most pleased, team wise, about the Virginia Duels performance?
I thought, BC, I think, was probably the highlight of the event, but also thought Mitch Moore's making some gains. Lost a tough match to Cedarian Perry, who was an All-American last year, and really it's a match that I felt like we could have easily have won. His bottom still needs some improvement and some work. I mean, he's a true freshman, and that's typical for guys that are true freshmen. But I feel like from a confidence standpoint, he's definitely made strides. Corbin Myers, I felt like wrestled really, really well. Was offensive, and when he's offensive and stays on his offense, he's got great attack. So, and then our guys that are kind of established, I felt like wrestled well also. So, all around, I think, when you go into an event, you have three dual meets, and I think we only lost 4 total matches, and 3 of them are at 125. You got to feel good about the way the guys wrestle and the way they competed, and I think the progress that we're making as a team. And UVA had been wrestling pretty well, and Old Dominion. I mean, they've had some pretty good dual meet wins here in the last month or so, and they were definitely had some momentum on their side.
You talk about 125 pounds. I think that's what most people are kind of wondering right now, because Nordstrom and Prada both under 500 in terms of their season records. What's the situation there? I mean, who's emerging as taking the lead on that spot right now, or is it still kind of by week to week wait and see?
I think it's a week-to-week wait and see. I don't think anybody has, either one of those guys has established themselves, as the front runner. So we're going to continue to evaluate that. And, Health will depend on that a little bit, who we're going to see. One of those guys is a little bit banged up. But, yeah, I mean, that's 125 is definitely an area of concern for us as a coaching staff. And it's an area that we need to improve upon. And, we need to get those guys going. And they have to get their hand raised more. That's just the bottom line. It's just a weight class where we're not getting it done at right now, quite frankly.
We'll talk about Pitt and Lehigh here in a second, but one of the bigger topics that's been prevailing in college wrestling, and it's not just your program or my program or your program if you're a fan of another team listening, it's every program, and it's the NCAA ticket allotment. So let's update Hokie Nation on what the situation is from a Virginia Tech perspective and maybe how nerve-wracking it's been from a coaching staff perspective.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And I put out a tweet late last week on the situation to try and get people updated that requested tickets. And we're knee deep in going through the list of people that requested and trying to figure out how we're going to allocate those tickets. Unfortunately, we received about 40% of what we requested, and typically, you're not going to get what you request, but, in previous years, it's always been relatively close. We anticipated that it would be a little bit tighter this year and a little bit more difficult this year just because, it's a 16,000 seat arena. It's in Pennsylvania. It's in Pittsburgh where there's, a big population base on the East Coast, and the tickets were going to be in high demand. But, that being said, we're not in as bad a shape as some other programs, but we're certainly not in a spot where we are going to be able to accommodate everybody, unfortunately. So there's going to be some fans that have went to the NCAAs previously that are going to get an email from us, hopefully, by the end of the week, if not early next week. And it's maybe, not the news that they're looking for. So we're doing our best to accommodate everybody and be as fair as possible. But, the situation is what it is. I mean, we only have a certain amount of tickets, and we also those tickets also go to the families of our athletes, the guys that qualify, the families of our coaches, all of our support staff. So we've got a lot of people that are in line trying to get tickets, and it's an unfortunate situation. But like you said, I mean, we're not the only institution that's in this situation, and I think there's a lot of schools that are probably in far worse shape than we are.
Yeah, I think it might have been Ray Blake at Stanford or something. I can't remember, or I can't remember who it was, but they put a tweet out and be like, "Hey, anybody know where we can get NCAA tickets?" Asking for about 75 of my friends, and that was referring to all the Division I programs. So it's definitely been interesting. And what I find the most intriguing about all this is, the NCAA, the last time it was really in a smaller facility was in Des Moines, which is a pretty big facility, but its floor space and capacity tweaked a little bit. And you look at the hockey alignment for Pittsburgh. Well, it seats 18 and change. Well, not all floor spaces and ice sheets are created equal. So, you take out some of those end zone bleachers. You've got to fill in the media seating, which actually the NCAA has actually dialed down. So where there's an upper deck, there's only going to be limited media and sports information directors on the floor. Whereas in St. Louis, you've pretty much got 2-3 whole tables worth. St. Louis has the biggest sheet of ice in the NHL, from what I understand. So the amount of floor space needed expands when you don't have a big ice sheet. So you've got to take out, in this case, bleachers. I mean, they will probably come back in when we get to the finals, and, it'll be more than 16,000. But it's like, Is this a good problem to have eventually? I mean, it kind of stinks this year, but looking next year at US Bank Stadium here in Minneapolis, it's like there's going to be probably no shortage of tickets. And if that's a good thing, I think they're shooting for 24, expandable up to 34,000. I mean, if there's a time to say, hey, let's get some tickets, next year is also something that, really could change the momentum of how these championships are run and the type of venues they're in.
No, I agree, and I do think it's a good thing. The demand is high, and this event it continues to grow, and it's very popular. And anybody that's been to the event, recognizes that. And I think people that go, they want to come back and they want to be a part of it because it's really from a fan standpoint, it's a fantastic thing to watch and be a part of. And once you go once, it's hard not to go back. So I think it's a good problem to have. I think, could have been handled a little bit better. I think distributing some information to the universities from the NCAAs on exactly how the allocation process was going to work and what they anticipated might have been helpful for some schools in terms of knowing what to request for tickets. I think a lot of schools went out and they requested what they typically do, anticipating they would get what they typically get, and it just didn't work that way. And next year it'll be on the flip side of that. There's going to be a lot of tickets available, so I think your request process, you'll probably get a lot closer to what you request next year, hopefully. So, there's definitely some strategy and some things that you have to consider when you go through this process, and your ticket office has to make some wise decisions. So it's a good problem to have, but I think from a lot of fans' perspective, it's going to be disappointing this year. We are in the process. I'm trying to secure a luxury box for Hokie fans as well. So if there's anybody listening that may be interested in being part of that, they should get in touch with me as soon as they hear this.
Yeah, and if you're looking at the secondary market, you could get a box ticket for probably what you might if you're going to StubHub or Vivid Seats or something like that. Of course, there's the NCAA Ticket Exchange, but if you're looking at the secondary market, your prices aren't that different, and you get a box out of it too. So consider that. So now, moving on. Enough about the inner workings of NCAA tickets. We've got two big duels coming up, both against ranked teams, as Lehigh has actually jumped back into the rankings after winning 5 straight duels after a injury-riddled 0-7 start. You wrestle them on Sunday, but before we get to it, Pitt and Virginia Tech, the Division I version, I guess, of the Battle of the Bergs, I guess you guys are dubbing it. It is Corps Cadets Appreciation Night, Rally Towel Night, 7:30 at Cassell. Number 12, number 13, and just before we even get into the nuances of the individual matchups, just from an opposing coach's perspective, talk about the job Keith Yavin's done in just his second year at Pittsburgh and what makes the Panthers very formidable at this juncture in time.
Yeah, Coach Gavin and his staff have done an awesome job, and I'm not surprised. I knew when they hired Keith that we'd see big. I think I've even mentioned that on the show, that we would see some big strides and improvement from their program. It's probably happened a little bit faster than even I anticipated. They've gotten a couple of transfers that have helped them tremendously, but they're wrestling very, very well, and I think he's done a good job of developing his guys, implementing his system, his philosophy, and really making some changes to the culture of their program, and that's what we're seeing right now with the results they've been having. They're really have been wrestling well. They lost to Oklahoma State last weekend, but wrestled Oklahoma State pretty well and had some competitive matches and a few matches slip away that they very easily could have won in that dual meet to make the team score a lot closer. So it's going to be an exciting match. I mean, I think if you look up and down the lineups, there's several matchups that are going to be great matches and close matches. And I think that's what really makes an exciting dual meet. When you look on paper, and almost every match, or probably 8 of the 10 matches are I don't want to say toss-ups, but maybe there's a slight favorite for them or a slight favorite for us, and those matches are going to be good, and they're probably going to be decided by 1 or 2 points. So, I know we are excited as a program to have an opportunity to go out and make a statement and, show people what we're all about and what we've been doing. And this is a great opportunity for us this weekend. We have a lot of individual guys that have, we're going to see 2 really good opponents this weekend. So, I think from our standpoint, that's what we're looking at it as. We're looking at it as an opportunity to make some noise, to, hopefully win some matches and allow our guys to kind of, open some eyes to what we've been doing here in Blacksburg.
Yeah, you talked about the job that they're doing up there. One thing that strikes me the most, odd about Pitt's team is there's not a whole lot of power. You see names in lineups. Phillippe's coming off a big win over Dayton Fix, but Kellen Stout was pretty good coming out of high school. Demetrius Thomas is an NAIA champ at Williams Baptist, but there's not really names that just jump out at the page going, "Oh, this team is loaded with studs." It seems like there's been development there. I mean, LJ Bentley's up a couple weights from where he's been a national qualifier, but it seems like it's a journeyman style of team. It's just like these guys are just gritty and grinding. It's not like it's full of superstars. It's a team that's going to come in, have a solid dual team, and put up a lot of fight.
Yeah, no question. I think solid is probably a great word to describe. I mean, obviously Phillippe's wrestling well. Bonacorsi at 184 is having a great season for a freshman. Kellen Stout's wrestling pretty good. right now, and their heavyweight is, he's a pretty impressive guy as well. So, but yeah, I think you're right. I think that a lot of that goes along with, kind of where they recruit at geographically and the makeup of Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania wrestling. I mean, that's kind of what you get. And, they've done a good job of plugging some holes with some PA guys and some Ohio guys. And, fortunately for them, geographically, they're probably in as good a spot as any school in the country when it comes to recruiting them in Lehigh as well. So, West Southwest PA and that WPIAL area is a really strong high school wrestling area, as is the Lehigh Valley and eastern Pennsylvania near Lehigh.
Speaking from experience on that Western PA stuff, eh?
Yeah, I've had, spent a lot of time in Western PA over the years.
As we look at some of the matchups, you talked about the swings. Again, from my perspective where I sit, I think the swings right off the bat at 125, no matter who you throw out there, it's going to be a match between two wrestlers that are going to be under 500. So, and oftentimes in dual teams, it's not the strength of your strongest. Sometimes it's the strength of your, to use the weakest link of a chain analogy or whatever. But, this is a match that could have a big outcome on how the duel goes. And it's right off the bat at 25, depending on the draw.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you look at when as a coaching staff, we sit down and kind of start looking at this thing and start adding it up, 125 is key to potentially the outcome of this dual meet. So they've got a true freshman in there that's definitely been struggling a little bit, and I think it's pretty well documented in terms of what we've been doing at 125 this year. So whether it's Prada or Nordstrom for us, it's a very winnable match, and that's going to be key. I think if we go out there and we wrestle hard and we wrestle well, we can come out with a victory at 125 and hopefully create some momentum. And I think, like you said, as we go up, I think we're going to have that same theme talking about a lot of these matches moving forward.
Yeah, the theme is that way as we move to 133. Philippi coming off the big win over Dayton Fix. And, 13-1 on the year, been pretty solid. His only loss is Suriano. Corbin Myers wrestled well at the Virginia Duels. So on paper, you're looking at Philippi as the favorite. He's a guy that was in the ACC prior, and he's still in the ACC. He spent some time at Virginia, got some extra years back. So depending on which eligibility clock you follow, we don't really know exactly how old Mr. Philippi is. But, this is one where on paper, Pitt's favored. But what's Corbin got to do to win this one?
I think if Corbin can finish takedowns and finish clean, I think he's got a good chance to win. I really do. These guys have wrestled each other, since the time they were kids. They wrestled in high school, and Philippi's always maybe been a little bit ahead, but they've wrestled a lot of close matches. Philippi's a guy that's really stingy, tough to score on, tough to finish on. He's good on top. But Corbin, when he's on his game, I feel like he can go out and score takedowns on anybody. His offense, when he pulls the trigger, is phenomenal. So I think Corbin's got a lot of confidence going into this match. Like I said, I feel like he knows this guy well. He knows what he's about. He knows what he needs to do to get his hand raised in this match. And I think Corbin's got a lot of confidence right now. I think he's made some improvements throughout the course of the year since we saw him at the Hokie Open, and he just continues to wrestle better and better and better. So great opportunity for him to wrestle the number 4 ranked guy in the country.
141 pounds. Couple guys from the state of Ohio, LJ Bentley, who's again had a decent career starting off, kind of still trying to figure out the weight class. Kind of maybe we really don't know the situation with Bentley up at Pitt in terms of what's been going on there. But Mitch Moore, again 12-3 on the season. Couple Ohio guys, going to mix it up. Swing match too, because Bentley is dangerous despite the the weight class where he's up from, where he's probably more comfortable.
Yeah, we've got a St. Paris Graham, Ohio guy wrestling with St. Ed's guy. So you have two, these guys wrestled at rival high schools in high school, and it's an interesting match. I think, Mitch is a dangerous guy as well. I think we've seen that. Mitch has got the capability of going out there and pinning almost anybody in the country. It's going to be, this is another one where you never know. This is definitely a swing match, and this is something that I think Mitch has got to be ready for when he steps on the mat. I think Bentley's, I've watched some video on him. He's definitely made some improvements. He's added a few things to his wrestling, and he's, I think, 12-6 or something on the year, so he's having a pretty good season. I feel like he's been coming on strong lately, as is all the Pitt guys. But we could say the same thing about Mitch. I felt like Mitch wrestled really well at the Virginia duels. And I think if Mitch can get to the positions that he's good and he wrestles in the positions that he wants to be, he's got a good chance of winning this thing. I mean, Mitch, when he gets to where he's good in that front headlock, he's got a lot of things that are really hard to stop.
149 pounds, Ryan Blease at 10-9, Robert Lee at 8-6. So again, swing match here is, I guess it's a tale of two Ryan Bleases. The one that shows he's got All-American capability and flashes of how he was one of the top-ranked guys in the country coming out of high school, and the one who's kind of unpredictable. So, which one? Obviously, the one you need coming out is the one with the All-American potential. But a guy like Robert Lee is a problem matchup.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like what we've seen from Ryan here recently in the practice room. I just think from a mental standpoint, he seems to be turning the corner. And he did, it was similar to last year. He struggled early on in the season, and then when we got into January and February, he did his best wrestling. So he's looked really good in practice. Obviously, he had a pretty good weekend at the Virginia duels, and we've been, as a coaching staff, we've been spending a lot of time with Ryan, both with the physical part of it and the mental part of it, and I've seen progress. So I'm excited about the direction that Ryan's heading. I think that if he continues on this trajectory, I think he could finish this season and finish his career on a high note. So, for Ryan, if you want to be an All-American this year, this has got to be a match that you go out and that, you can win and comfortably. So, like you said, I mean, you never know. You never know what you're going to get, but I'm pretty confident in the direction Ryan's headed and kind of where he's at currently.
157, another one that's going to be hotly contested. The always dangerous Taleb Rahmani of Pitt. He's also coming off a loss in BC. Both of them 11-4. This has got like street fight written all over it.
I think it'll be entertaining for sure. BC lost to him, I think, twice last year. Once in Vegas, maybe 3 times. Once in the duel, and they may have been rough with the ACC championships, but. All close matches, and I think BC's in a different place right now than he was a year ago. So yeah, I mean, Rahimi's a dangerous guy. He's got a couple of holds that he's really good at, a little bit like Mitch Moore in a sense, where if he can get positions where he's good, he can score, and he can score big points and back points on almost anybody in the country. So you got to be aware of where he's good, and you have to really work hard to stay out of those positions, stay away from them. And in BC, I think he's kind of finding his groove and figuring out where he wants to wrestle from, and he's been real physical, and I think that's going to be key to this match. I mean, BC needs to go out and use his physical strength and his athleticism to his ability. I mean, there's a couple positions for BC when he gets around your waist and body locks you. He's pretty darn strong. So, that's what we have to continue to do is wrestle our match and get to the positions we want to be in, and then capitalize when you get to those positions.
Makai Lewis at 14-2, taking on Jake Wenzel, 9-5. Wenzel, one of those guys, again, that's a Western PA guy, kind of the grinder, solid, as we were talking about. What do you as a staff tell a guy like Makai Lewis, again, that redshirt freshman? You can't overlook guys like this. This could be looked at as a trap match in some respects, but what's Makai got to do to stay focused and continue wrestling well?
I think he just has to focus on himself. I mean, Wenzel's tough. There's no doubt. He's a tough guy. He goes hard. He's a competitor. But Makai is just, I think Makai, when he goes out and he focuses on himself and he focuses on his wrestling and getting to his attacks and moving his feet, and he did a great job at the Virginia duels with, his motion and his fakes and just blowing through guys on his shots. And when he's wrestling like that, he's a scary guy. He's not I don't think anybody wants to see that Makai Lewis. So, if he gets in the right, we just have to get him in the right mindset and go out there, and his focus has to be on scoring points the entire time and wrestling hard for 7 minutes. And when he does that, Makai is a handful for anybody.
I guess we're pretty much going to ask the same question about Dave McFadden, although he's got some All-American credentials behind him. This isn't his first time through these lineups. I mean, he's getting everybody's best shot since he's been on the podium. But again, what's he got to do to make sure that he doesn't slip up?
Well, I think, what I'd like to see most from Dave is for him to start to open up these matches a little bit and attack more. And I think some of it's technical, some things that he can do differently to help him get to his offense a little bit more and get to the legs and commit on his leg attacks. He's been not as wide open as I'd like to see him be in some matches, and I think he's holding some back, and I think he has a little bit more. So that to me, that's the challenge for Dave, not only on Friday, but he's got a tough match against Lehigh, against Cutler, who's highly ranked guy, returning couple-time All-American. So Dave has got to be more offensive and really focusing on getting his attacks going more, and that's what I'd like to see the most, and open those matches up so it's not a 1 or 2 or 3 point match in the third period, especially against guys that we feel like Dave is better than. I mean, he's got the ability to go out there and major and tech a lot of guys in the country, so that's really what we're pushing to see from him.
You had mentioned the solid freshman season that Nino Bonacorsi's having from Pitt. Zach Zavasky been wrestling just lights out recently. You got a tough freshman, you got a returning All-American, and a dual meet that swing matches and bonus points are a key factor. I mean, are you looking for Zach to go out to get bonus here, or as you go out and you can't get too overconfident against a guy that's going to be against one of his highest ranked opponents all year?
Well, first off, Bonacorsi's tough. They wrestled out in Las Vegas, and he wrestled him well. That guy's going to stay in your face the whole time, and he's going to keep coming at you. I do think Zach is capable of going out and scoring multiple takedowns. And again, it's about continuing to improve, continuing to wrestle, continue to widen the gap throughout the course of the match. And if he can do that, it takes hope away from these guys. If you're up by 4 or 5 or 6 going into the third period or late in the match, very good chance of you getting a major decision. But if you let guys hang around and you're not as offensive as you could be, and you don't take advantage of scoring opportunities, you go into the third period late in the match, and that guy's got hope, he's got confidence, and you put him in a position where he, something can happen where he can knock you off. So for me, Zach's got a little bit like Dave, he's got to go out and he's got to stay offensive, stay on the attack, continue to score, and continue to widen that gap and hopefully put himself in a position where late in the match, we've got an opportunity to major the guy and get some bonus points and help his team. That's what we're looking for from Zach. He's a fifth-year senior. He's a team captain, and he's got the ability to do that as well.
197 pounds, the big win for Tom Slay over Jay Aiello, kind of turning things around. Looked like Tom's finally catching the groove in Blacksburg. I mean, what's been the difference with his wrestling the last couple weeks?
I think as much as anything, Tom's wrestling smart. Early in the year, he just was doing things that was outside of his skill set, and he was sloppy, and he was rolling around and making bad decisions, and I don't want to say giving matches away, but he was giving points away, that's for sure. So, we went back and before he wrestled Virginia at the Virginia Duels, watched his match in Las Vegas against Aiello, and, after watching that, it was clear to me that we just weren't wrestling smart at the beginning of the year, and I think Tom's making better decisions out there. He's staying where he's good. He's staying in his box, so to speak, a little bit. And I think that's what you're seeing with him. And he's not, necessarily going to be a guy that goes out and scores 8 or 10 points in a match, but he's stingy. He's very good on top. His mat wrestling is great. He's a good scrambler, and when he wrestles smart and takes advantage of opportunities, he's got a chance to place really high at the NCAA tournament if he continues on this path. And maintains his focus. That's a big thing too, is focusing for 7 minutes out there and not having a lapse or a letdown where you put yourself in a bad situation, you give up an easy 2 or a takedown. So just staying solid, I think that's the biggest thing. And he's done a nice job being coachable and making those adjustments.
His opponent, Kellen Stout, pretty good pedigree there. Dad had a pretty good career at Clarion. What do you remember about the Stout, Brian wrestling at Clarion?
Well, me and Brian, we graduated the same year, and I went to Edinburgh. He was at Clarion, so I know Brian really, really well. Wrestled against each other, not against each other, but, Clarion and Edinburgh wrestled against each other a lot over the course of those years. And, Brian was, I think he's a 4-time All-American. The guy was a stud, there's no doubt. And just a physical specimen, and he's a great guy, great family, and so he's definitely got good genetics. If you ever saw Brian Stout, even today, he looks like he could play in the NFL. So he's got a couple little brothers that are studs as well.
Moving to heavyweight, Billy Miller again wrestled really solid at the Virginia Duels. His opponent, Demetrius Thomas, and for those who are unfamiliar with Mr. Thomas, I announced the NAI tournament the last 2 years. This guy started wrestling in high school from Fergus, Missouri, comes out there. Kerry Regner, who's now the head coach at Millersville, Division II school up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, got this guy on campus. He wins the national title as a freshman, finishes second as a sophomore. Regner has left, and then next thing you know, he shows up. And as soon as I heard he was transferring to Pitt, I'm like, this guy is going to be problems for Division I heavyweights because he's still learning how to wrestle. Now, that being said, at 20-3, you've got a much more experienced wrestler like Billy Miller against a guy that's just blows through people. How do you strategize against a guy just that explosive and that raw, who is still really having fun learning how to wrestle, and he's really become a really good Division I heavyweight?
Yeah, he's pretty good. I mean, definitely Billy's got his work cut out for him. I think Billy maintaining and staying in really good position is going to be important. Keeping his head low, keeping his knees bent, because this guy is explosive, like you mentioned. He can shoot from the outside. He's not your typical heavyweight, so to speak. He'll fire off 4 or 5 or 6 double legs a match. So, for Billy, I think if we can get to his offense right away. And, I think we got to close the gap, keep our hands on this guy. When we get on top, we've got to ride. We've got to make him work for everything, and just be aware of what he's going to try to do. I mean, he is somewhat predictable, but that being said, he's pretty good at what he does. So was impressed with him in the Oklahoma State dual meet against one of the best, highest ranked guys in the country. Wrestled really well and was in that match late. So for Billy, he's got to go out there and he's got to be ready to wrestle for 7 minutes. And again, he can't have any lapses from an intensity or a focus standpoint, or, this guy will be blasting through him. So Billy's got to, like I said, stay on his offense. I think if we can get on top of this guy and we can ride this guy and we can take something out of him, I like our chances.
Match again, 7:30 on Friday, January 25th at Cassell Coliseum. Also streaming live on ACC Network Extra if you cannot make it. And as far as what we have, Corps of Cadets Appreciation Day, the Battle of the Bergs, the Rally Towel, what's all this stuff, going on from a coach standpoint? The Corps of Cadets Appreciation, explain that just a little bit.
Well, we always like to do a military appreciation day here at Virginia Tech. We've got the second largest Corps Cadet program in the country behind Texas A&M. So we want to honor them, and we've got some pretty cool military appreciation singlets that we wear every year that I know our fans really like. So that's part of it, and and anything we can do to create interest and increase the attendance at our matches, we're going to try to do. So I think, our marketing department comes up with some really clever things. And there's also a high school match that's going to take place at 5:30 before we wrestle. And so hopefully a lot of those fans will stick around and watch us compete. And really, I think it's going to be a great, entertaining dual meet like we talked about. There's a lot of matches that I think are going to be decided by a few points, and it's going to be exciting from a fan's perspective.
The battle for ACC supremacy comes to... No, sorry, I'm just doing my radio promotional voice there. Now, one more duel to talk about. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time compared to Pitt because, again, Pitt was the conference duel. This makes more sense for conference seating. But Lehigh, again, coming in 5-7. They're going to wrestle Arizona State the night before. So when you're looking at coming in and having a day off compared to going back-to-back duels, what's that do from a team side? You got to have to travel up to Pennsylvania, hopefully avoiding some snow, and wrestle Lehigh right after they're wrestling Arizona State. So is there an advantage coming in with the day break versus back-to-back weigh-ins?
I don't know. We're actually gonna fly out of Roanoke. We've got a direct flight into Philly, so we'll fly out Saturday morning and then bus over to Bethlehem. We will get a pound. Both teams will get a pound allowance on Sunday because Lehigh and Arizona State wrestle on Saturday. But As far as there being an advantage, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you know, from a weigh-in standpoint, you could look at it and say that we've got an advantage. They've got to weigh in Saturday night and then again on Sunday, but they're also at home. We're traveling, so you know, at the end of the day, you got to step out there and you have to wrestle 7 minutes regardless. So it's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be ideal. You're not always going to feel perfect. You just got to go out there and figure out how to get yourself up mentally and physically and get the job done. So for us, it's a good test for us to wrestle two really quality teams, well-coached teams, in one weekend, Friday, Sunday, and have to travel and weigh in twice. So, you know, I'm excited to see how we handle that and how we respond to the challenge. Like you said, I mean, it's a big weekend for us. We've got a lot of guys that have big matches, two really big matches, guys like Savatsky and BC LaPrat and, you know, Corbin Myers. So we've got great opportunity this weekend, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, Lehigh's walking wounded, actually getting a little healthier again. You'd mentioned some of the weights. Key matchups there again at 133. Brandon Petzel's had a pretty good year since transferring over from Rutgers. Josh Humphreys, talented true freshman at 157. He's also been bitten by the injury bug. Mekhi Lewis going to have one of the funkiest wrestlers on the planet in Gordon Wolf at 165. You'd mentioned Jordan Cutler at 74, Ryan Price at 84. They got a three-headed monster at 97, so you don't really know which one they're going to throw out there. Maybe they just pick from a hat and throw it out there, and then a really solid heavyweight in Jordan Wood. So, you know, you could go spend another hour breaking down this one, but, you know, the keys there, I mean, from looking at Pat Santoro's perspective at Lehigh, I mean, this has got to be one of the most nerve-wracking seasons. I mean, what's it like to look at, man, they lost 6 starters at some point. I mean, they lost Scotty Parker for the year. Connor Schramm transferred there, and he didn't even get a chance to wrestle for them. I mean, you know, do you feel for Pat Santoro right now?
Not this week, but in general, yes. Pat's a good buddy of mine and one of the best guys in the sport of wrestling. So they've had probably as many injury issues this year as any team that I can remember. So I do feel for Pat, but hey, you know, we got to go up there and wrestle them. So we're going to wrestle the 10 guys that they throw out on the mat, and it is what it is. We can't worry about it too much.
We've mentioned this on the program before in terms of the dynamic between Lehigh and Virginia Tech wrestling each other. Going into Grace Hall, I mean, that is that's one of the most, that's to me one of the best places to wrestle in college wrestling. There's a short list. It's, you know, Carver Hawkeye and Rec Hall, of course, with Penn State and Iowa are two really great places. The old Cook Hall, I can't remember. The Thunderdome at VMI was always a really cool place to watch wrestling. And Grace, those are like my top 4. You know, what's it like to go into Grace Hall with that kind of iconic setting?
It's pretty cool. The fans are right on top. Yeah, I wrestled there as an athlete when I was at Edinburgh, and it's loud, and their fans are pretty rowdy and knowledgeable, and it's Pennsylvania, so they take their wrestling really, really serious up there. So, you know, especially in that Lehigh Valley area. But yeah, it's a good atmosphere. It's you know, those are the type of places that you want to travel to, and that's the kind of atmosphere you want to get your guys into for them to experience and have to, you know, deal with that a little bit, because you know, that's what you're going to see when you get to the NCAA tournament. You know, you get to the quarterfinals and semifinals and finals, the nationals. You can't hear your coach in the corner coaching you. It's so loud. So you've got to kind of experience that beforehand and understand what it's going to be like and deal with that adversity. So I think it's going to be good for our guys to get in an environment like that and have to compete and perform against a quality team. So yeah, it's definitely going to help us prepare for March and for the NCAA tournament.
Those who can't make it up to Bethlehem on Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern, that match is going to be streamed live on Flow if you've got a Flow Pro subscription. Of course, again, January 25th, Friday, 7:30 at Cassell is the ACC duel against Pitt. Coach Roby, any final thoughts as we wrap up episode 77?
Just hope to see a lot of people out. We've got quite a few home events coming down the stretch of the season here, so we need as much support as possible. We need to get the Hokie Nation, the Hokie wrestling fans out on Friday nights to support us against Pitt. And then, you know, a couple weeks from now, we've got Cornell and UVA at the Moss Arts Center, and then we close it out with NC State. So it's a pretty exciting time in Blacksburg for wrestling, and then we'll also have the ACC championship. So I think our wrestling fans in this area are going to get their fill of wrestling here over the course of the next month or so.
Hokie fans, listen to Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling anywhere you go by subscribing on Apple Podcasts. Go to InsideVirginiaTechWrestling.com/iTunes, or you can get the exclusive Android or iOS apps by going to InsideVirginiaTechWrestling.com.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.